Welcome to The Long Game. I'm Ross Kagan, Regis Professor of Precision Medicine at the University of Glasgow.
And hi, I'm Sandy Weir, Tech Innovation Leader and Strategic Program Manager, joining you from Edinburgh.
On The Long Game, we explore the collision of cells, code, and capital in the Scottish life sciences sector. As part of our ongoing AI series, we've been discussing the pragmatic sides of AI, how algorithms are speeding up hospital admin and reading medical scans.
But today, Ross, we're going to step out of the hospital administration office and we're driving straight into the realms of science fiction. I feel like we're actually stepping into an episode of The Outer Limits this week.
Cue the music. My friend. 100%. I will cue some music on that.
And I remember the episodes always used to start with the following words. For the next half hour, we will control all that you see and hear. Now, we're not going to do that,
you
obviously.
Remember that. Wow. Now I'm a little worried about doing more podcasts with you. Have you been extracting my brain? Which I have to say is a presage to what we'll be talking about today. But
that's right, because today we'll be looking at the absolute bleeding edge of artificial intelligence in 2026.
Yeah, this, Sandy, should be both fun and maybe not so fun, especially now that I know your abilities, or I'm learning them. So let's talk about some recent breakthroughs that basically break the concept of the human mind as a private sanctuary. We're going to look at how AI is being used to read our minds and even interact with our dreams.
Yeah, but we're not here to marvel at the technology. We're also going to confront the dark side of the algorithm. So we'll be discussing the sort of massive growing controversy around AI in healthcare, specifically how biased data is actively endangering women and minority groups, and why an algorithm can never replace the human touch in a crisis. So I get to say it this week, Ross. Put down your sausage roll and let's get into it. So we're going to start with a...
Thanks.
Useful
Not
reminder.
had lunch yet.
So we're going to start with the sci-fi stuff, right? We're when we think of medical AI, we think of predictive diagnostics. But you've been telling me something really interesting. You've been telling me about some new science that sounds like it actually belongs in a cyberpunk movie. So think about Blade Runner, think The Matrix, The Ghost in the Shell. Take it away, Ross.
Wow. You're naming all my favorites. And I have to say that we were going to stop our AI at 2, but as we were digging into it, for myself, as I was digging into it, I was like, oh, we have to talk about this. We have to talk about this. This one's a little scary. So today we're going to focus on basically biohacking the brain, if you will. So yes, so you could say that what we're going to talk about today belongs in a cyberpunk movie. Look, Sandy, for centuries, the human mind has been the ultimate black box. It's always been our sanctuary. But we're going to talk today about how companies are learning to pick the lock on our minds. We're going to talk about how AI systems can decode our brain activity and turn our internal thoughts into visual images in real time.
Wait, the computer is actually going to be able to see what we're thinking.
Oh, yeah. Let's start with everybody's favorite company, Meta. They've been developing magnetoencephalography, or MEG, as a non-invasive way to read brain activity fast. So thousands of measurements every second, that's the key. And they've paired it with an AI system, of course, that then reconstructs what you're seeing as your visual systems play out in your brain. In other words, they're taking what is here and they're putting it out onto a screen. And my favorite comment by Meta about this technology, it's, quote, easy to use.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I guess it's both reassuring and at the same time, mildly terrifying.
Yeah, now we cue that same music again, right? So Dream Connect goes further. It just, the further I went down this rabbit hole. So Dream Connect uses fMRI, which you know much more about than, for example, I do. Uses diffusion models to visualize what someone is imagining, what they're dreaming even. And here's the kicker. So not only can they do that the way Meg can, but then they can alter that image in real time. So let me give an example. So let's say you're imagining a horse. But maybe because you're Scottish, you want to think about unicorns. Okay. So what the system does is it actually reads the signals in your brain. If it actually can reconstruct a horse, I've seen this on these screens. It is crazy. And then as it's sending it through, it figures the least steps to putting a horn on that horse. And then you're watching this as it's coming out. And that is directly influencing the next thoughts in your head. And you go from horse to unicorn. Okay. So this is a big step towards linking dreams, your thoughts, and interactive visualization to change what is actually in your mind. So, Sandy, we recently discussed Mallard, who developed MRI. What do you think? I wonder if he would be excited or terrified or what?
Yeah, I think probably a mixture of both. For those that are listening and thinking, and we've definitely pitched this as kind of science fiction.
Hmm.
What you're describing are very, very bold steps in science, but of course, clinical electroencephalography, or EEG, has been around for years. So if you're not familiar with EEG, it's a non-invasive diagnostic that records the brain's spontaneous electrical activity using these small electrodes that are placed on the scalp. You've probably seen pictures or images of people sitting in a lab with one of these skull caps on with the various probes that are placed on it. And it's primarily used to diagnose epilepsy, sleep disorders, some forms of brain dysfunction by detecting abnormal wave patterns. But what you're describing, Ross, is really the confluence of that old EEG technology and what's coming through is cutting edge
Yeah,
AI. And
yeah, yeah.
it's absolutely amazing that we're able to use this to scan and read the brain.
Yeah. I mean, it's both the ability to read the details of it because the classic EEGs weren't giving you horses on a screen, um, and speed.
Yeah.
So the ability to do quick feedback, and that's the two of them together, of course, that's key because to just say, oh, I knew you last week you were looking at a horse now that we've crunched the numbers, that's not helpful. But the speed, the ability to decode it quickly, and of course, the detailed information. Just a month or two ago, they upgraded Meg, and now the resolution is even higher. Like I said, you have to see some of these. It is wild to look at it.
Yeah.
Um, so, okay, let's get weirder. So, because, why not? So let's shift. I'm going to play the what's the name?
The outer
The
limits.
music for,
Yeah.
yeah, Outer Limits music. I'm going to play it through this whole podcast. Um, so let's shift from reading the brain to changing it. Okay. And this, of course, is where all of this is building up to. And we're not there quite yet, but we are getting pretty close. So researchers are building AI-driven brain implants that detect emotional states and actually adjust your neural activity in real time.
Oh, goodness me. So what you're actually describing is the ability to alter emotional states, right?
Yeah. So deep brain stimulation, I think many of us know something
Mm.
about that. That's been used for a long time for Parkinson's, things like that. Okay. I've known people who have used it, and maybe we'll do a episode sometime on that and related technologies. But we're doing AI and we're doing weird stuff that plays weird music. So let's talk about how these electrodes are being paired with machine learning, with AI. So AI will monitor the brainwave activity that you get from these electrodes. It detects patterns. It can recognize, oh, I see that this person is having a bout of anxiety, a bout of depression. And then before you even realize that you're anxious or depressed, it will actually adjust stimulation with feedback to alter and respond. So I guess feed forward to adjust the stimulation before you even notice a shift in your mood, and change it. So basically, what they're building is a type of emotional autopilot.
Yes, it's incredible. And actually, on that topic of deep brain stimulation, I know exactly the right person that we can bring onto the pod to talk
Ooh,
a bit more
ooh.
about that. But an algorithm that directly modifies your mood in real time, again, incredibly impressive, but steadily getting ever more terrifying, Ross.
Yeah, yeah. And, this is not us just picking out weird stuff. Some of these systems are actually moving into clinical trials.
Mm.
And of course, I mean, let's put it out on the table. The clinical potential for this is incredible. Imagine helping somebody trapped in severe depression. We've all known people with severe depression has really wrecked their lives. Um, PTSD, Parkinson's related anxiety, things like that. But I just wanted to take a step back and think about where all this is going. And actually, this is going to be relevant to our wee bit of joy, weirdly enough, that we're going to get to later, which is philosophically, it gets a little weird. I mean, think about it. If an implant changes your mood before you even experience that mood, where exactly does the you end and the algorithm begin? Like, yeah. So we're moving from pacemakers for the heart to basically pacemakers for mood. And then exactly who are we?
Yeah, and we've been on this trajectory where we see physical signs, so these smart electrodes merging, of course, with AI and interfacing with our biology, and I guess that's what you're describing is even further deeper into that trajectory, Ross.
Yeah, exactly. Now I want to talk about physically merging the AI with the
Mm.
biology, which of course, again, is where all of this is going. And we all know these high profile companies like Neuralink and so on, that is pretty hot on their trail. But I wanted to talk about just this past month, engineers at Northwestern University, they printed artificial neurons, actually very cheaply and simply printed artificial neurons that communicate directly with living brain cells.
Yeah, wait. I mean, so I introduced this idea that we're on this trajectory, but you're describing printed circuit boards that actually talk to biological cells. You mentioned printed neurons. I mean, you got to tell us more.
Yes, Sandy, that's what I said. so, so these guys and gals at Northwestern, they created flexible, low-cost devices. They generate lifelike electrical circuits, so we know a fair bit about how individual neurons
Mm.
signal. And they've now been able to put this in a silicon chip. And when they tested it on mouse on brain slices in a dish, so I want to be clear on that, but this is the big first step. The artificial neurons that they created actually sent signals and manipulated the brains, the neurons in the mouse brain, and actually responded in real time to manipulate and change the signaling pathways and change I guess you would say, the thinking and the response of the brain. So in other words, we're no longer building silicon chips that think like brains. We're building these machines, these little mini machines that you can literally plug in and talk to your biological circuits.
Yeah, and as an engineer, the computational power behind this is really awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
But also being a human being, it's also slightly terrifying. Um, if an algorithm can decode what we're seeing or what we're dreaming, and now we have the printed neurons that we're able to plug in and interface with our biology, it really does completely destroy this concept of cognitive privacy.
Yeah. I think that's where I wanted to land with this since we're going to go dark today. We're both scientists. Of course, there's a part of us, a big part of us that loves all of this. I
Mm.
love it. And we originally was going to just do this as, hey, check this out. But I think we have to be a little bit straight about what's all happening. So, I mean, the clinical potential it's beautiful. Yeah.
Mm.
Imagine providing a voice to somebody who's lost the ability to speak due to a brain lesion. All of this is absolutely the case. I'm all for it. But the ethical implications are pretty dystopian, and we should actually put those out on the table. So, for example, let's just walk this all the way down. Who owns the copyright to your dreams and your thoughts? If I pull it out, is it mine? Can corporations monetize those thoughts? And let's go ahead and go right there. Can legal systems, political systems use it for interrogations? And the answer, of course they will do this.
Yeah, it really does highlight some of the key dangers of AI, Ross. The technology is advancing faster than our ethical and our governance frameworks can keep up. And that's exactly what we're seeing today. And it's playing out right there in healthcare systems as we speak.
Yeah. All right. So let's make a transition to this. We've talked about
Mm.
the really amazing and sometimes kind of scary potential of future AI. But what about the AI we're using right now, Sandy?
Yeah, the reality is that algorithmic bias is a real thing. So an AI is only as smart and as fair as the data that you train it on. And historically, the medical data that we've had access to has been overwhelmingly skewed towards white male populations. So great for us, Ross. Not so
Yeah,
great for most of the rest of the population.
yeah.
It was interesting. There's a research report that was released by Health Innovation Kent, Surrey, and Sussex. And that reported that healthcare AI systems are consistently failing women, especially those from ethnic minority backgrounds.
Yeah, I don't think either of us is surprised by any of this. So tell me, how bad is the bias?
Well, there was a survey recently that found that of the 74% of respondents, they believe that AI systems are reinforcing stereotypes, and a similar percentage noted that critical lack of diverse representation in AI and design and development is definitely a thing. It gets worse though when we look at how some of these tools are being used in practice. And there was a study done by London School of Economics recently that analysed an AI tool that is used by more than half of England's councils to summarise adult social care case notes.
All right, tell me, what did the AI do?
Well, the researchers imputed the exact same medical case notes into Google's Gemma AI tool, and they merely swapped out the gender of the patients, and the AI actively downplayed the women's physical and mental health issues. So it was significantly more than likely to describe men using words like complex, disabled, or unable, while omitting similar care needs for women. So clear, sense of bias in the results. And of course, that bias really makes it difficult and very serious in terms of how we might actually want to address the needs of those women.
Yeah, and this is something, of course, women have been talking about for a while,
Mm.
but to hear it come, because of course the AI is just trained on us, so it's a reflection of us as well as the AI. So if a local council is using this AI to make decisions to allocate limited health resources or care beds or any of this, I assume women are systematically receiving less care simply because the algorithm decides that, their pain is somehow less severe.
Yeah, precisely. And this is the danger because the amount of care you receive is determined and perceived by the perceived need, and biased software is likely going to result in unequal care provision. So, Ross, it's a big ethical question. We're rushing to roll out these tools to save money, but in many cases, there may not be the rigorous fairness and assessment that's required to ensure equitable outcomes particularly for the marginalized populations.
So what do you think, Sandy? It feels like we're losing the human, as you were talking about, the human element in healthcare.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Look, I have to say, and we've seen significant tightening of the validation methodology that's used around healthcare, and we can see that the healthcare regulatory bodies are really taking this issue of bias very, very seriously. They're looking very carefully at the data that's being used, and they're examining the claims of the medical devices that have been derived from the training of that on that data. So I'm not claiming that this is now a solved problem, but it's definitely a recognized problem. We're all very, very much more aware of the sources of bias in the data, and what appropriate and rigorous validation looks like. But Ross, you mentioned the human side, and that's perhaps the ultimate limits of an AI, right? So you look
Yeah.
at Japan. It's a country we both have very strong connections with, and Japan are facing a projected shortfall of something like 320,000 care workers by 2025, and they're looking after an ever increasingly growing elderly population. And Japan's population health, pyramid, the population pyramid, it really demonstrates the scale of their problem in this regard. Go take a look if you're curious, and you'll you'll see the problem right there. Inverted kite.
Yeah.
But another country with a really significant and similar challenges is China. And China are basically betting that their economy can deal with this problem of an aging population by really embracing and applying AI. Tech companies pitch that they'll be able to solve this with AI, with robots, with chatbots. But I put it to you, Ross, that you can't use a chatbot or a robot to replace the invisible, dignified human labor that's required to care for a vulnerable person. And that ultimately healthcare is tactile, it's messy, and it's not just about the technical problems, it's also a deeply human one. And anyone who's ever cared for a family member knows this very, very well.
Yeah. No, I think, again, I think we all, certainly by the time we get to our age, Sandy, we all know about this
Yeah.
in some detail, unfortunately. Sometimes it feels like that we are the sort of the like messy problem that if we just get out of the way, AI would be free to run amok. But of course, the point of all of this is supposed to be improving our lives, and I think it can improve our lives. But as you say, we have to keep our eye on what's actually important. And I just want to note, as somebody who's American, watching now Trump over in China, and they're having big discussions about AI. In the States, they're really focused on general AI.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but in China, their focus is not on that. It's actually on getting AI to work on the everyday little things. And it's for exact reason that you said, which is that they recognize this aging population issue, and they're very overt in their building and their focus of
Mm.
AI on solving the labor problem, specifically that. And that's why the two countries are duking it out on AI. But the truth is, they're actually coming in at different worlds for this.
Yeah, coming in different
So,
directions. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, God, we could talk about this for a while. Um, so this has really been an amazing conversation. It really highlights the ups and downs of AI. I'm sure this will not be our last word on AI going forward, but it is time to wrap up the series and this segment. Now we get to, after playing that scary music for a while, a wee bit of joy. Tell me what you got, Sandy. You got to bail us out here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Ross, I'm going to be short in this section today, but I wanted to share something that's I found really fascinating. It's a story that's been in the news this week, and they suggest that singing, painting, visiting a gallery or a museum, for example, that helps to slow your epigenetic aging. And we talk a lot in this section about the arts, the concerts, the events that we attend. And of course, that's what brings us that wee bit of joy. But is it possible that these are also things that are helping to improve our health? You see how we're connecting this, how well connected we were from the outset. We didn't know this research was going to come about. But according to a study, and this has been done by some folks at University College London, they're taking a really active interest in how art and culture can indeed do this. And the findings, as I understand it, they're the first to show that both participating in arts activities and attending events actually leads to people staying biologically younger. Extraordinary. So they argue that this provides evidence that the arts and cultural engagement should be recognized in the same way as health promoting behaviors like exercise. So I know what you're thinking, Ross. Should I go to the gym later, or should I maybe take a walk around Kelvin Hall Art Gallery? Will that eventually give you the same outcome? Of course, well, I'm sure you do as well, but I love this idea, and it feels like it's turned our wee bit of joy into our weekly exercise program as well.
Ooh, I like this.
But wait,
This
breakthrough. I might be making a controversial remark, but isn't this simply evidence that having fun is beneficial for your health? And I think that's something mankind has known for a long time. So tell me, my friend, what's been bringing you joy and keeping you healthy this week?
you're You're going to die on that hill? I just
I'm gonna
assumed
die that hill, yeah.
that's crazy. That's completely crazy. And I thought you were going to go for a third option, which was, of course, playing golf
So
um,
I
while
thought I've
discussing
been
books,
majoring
which
on
is what
golf
we've
in the
done.
last few weeks. So I thought I'd leave the golf remarks off the table today.
Yeah, for me, of course, but the longevity just means we can do more podcasts. So
Exactly.
it's a circular thing, right? The more we do,
The
so
longer we
people will
live,
get to listen to us for
the
decades.
more we do, the longer we live.
Yeah, the more we inflict this on people. So on that point, that's a lovely intro to my own. My wee bit of joy is this past week. It actually happened at my home turf, University of Glasgow, which I will keep saying that over and over again to your annoyance. And a shout out to my buddy Andrew Tobin, who recently hosted this artist, actually from New York City. So we've never met before, but we did have overlapping circles when we were chatting. Artist and biohacker Heather Dewey Hagberg at the Advanced Research Center at University. And she came here for 2 days of what Andrew calls ARC conversations.
Yeah, I find this so interesting. Biohacker and artist.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a unique combination, and you've just simply got to tell us more.
Yeah. No, I'm actually kind of into biohacking. In fact, her home base at a place called GenSpark down in Brooklyn I'm well familiar with it. Topic for another day. We should 100% have a whole biohacking thing here. Get some of the locals. Anyway, so Heather does this really boundary pushing work at the intersection of art and science and ethics. And I mean, at a very high level, she is a kick-ass DNA geneticist, actually, for example, and was originally trained in machine learning and things like that. So, but she's a very famous artist. On the first day, so she was here for 2 days, she hosted a film screening of her piece, a little video called Hybrid and Interspecies Opera. It blends documentary, personal narrative, and opera to explore xenotransplantation. So what am I talking about? The changing of pigs, manipulating them genetically so they can be parts for us. Okay. So, that's a whole conversation on its own. I'm going to keep this a little light. So she really dug into the history, the technologies, and I just wanted to say the ethical implications of these gene editing techniques. And she talked about, including a live Q&A, she basically asked, all right, you take transgenic pigs, you change them so that their heart, or liver, and so on looks more like us. So is that a new species? Like, is it a pig or is it a human? And if it is a new species that is neither, what exactly is our obligations to this new species?
Yeah. I hadn't even considered this before, and I'm sure many of the people that came along hadn't considered this before, but she makes a fantastic point. It's a really sort of heavy, it's a really deep point. It is very relevant to our world and certainly things that we've even talked about on this pod already, Ross. But yeah, I mean, she makes an excellent point. I mean,
Yeah, and
I tend to think that, yeah, new species, we're creating a new species.
I think so. I mean, everything is definition, but her deeper point is not at what point is it become a new species, but what is our obligations?
Mm.
So clearly, it is something new, right? And what exactly is our obligations for this? And we can go on and on about this discussion. We eat pigs, all this sort of thing. So it's complicated. But the second day, she did what she's actually most famous for, and I very much remember this. It was about 15 years ago when this hit the media. She had a piece called Stranger Visions, subtitled, What Can You Learn About a Stranger from a Strand of Hair? And what she did is she wandered around New York City. She collected genetic material from all over New York City, like a stray hair or chewing gum that people would leave in a public place. She then took them back to the lab, probably GenSpark, pulled the DNA out of it and used those sequence and read those sequence to create a physical portrait, sculpture basically, of these complete strangers, basically taking her best shot at what she thinks they must have looked like.
Right. So I've got to ask the question. So she
Yeah.
makes sculptures of people's faces from the DNA they leave behind in a bus seat.
Yeah.
Well,
So you say that like that's crazy, right? So I have to say, she doesn't claim to be able to like nail it exactly. In fact, sometimes she'll make multiple ones and say this is sort of the range.
Yeah.
Um, but she's asking a pretty interesting question, right?
Yeah, yeah, and Ross, I have to say you're kind of well placed at the moment, because looking at your very cropped hair these days, your DNA is
Yeah.
probably quite safe, right? She's not going to be able to get her hands on yours, but maybe mine's getting a little bit long.
I've got two words for you, Sandy. AI hair cutter. We've already had this conversation.
Oh dear.
Just tell me when your birthday is. I'll get it for you. It'll be all
Maybe
good.
go back to Andrew Bianchi. I'm not sure.
That's right. You may regret this. I've already talked to Andrew about this. He says he does not know how to cut hair, but I think he's avoiding the topic. I think he probably does, because he's a surgeon. They all know how to cut hair.
Yeah, you have to refer back to our previous pod.
Yeah, this is a flashback. So Heather's work challenges how we understand privacy, technology, and basically what it means to be human in this genomic age, in which concepts of human, of course, are going to become more and more plastic, both on the physical side, which is what Heather really thinks about, and on the virtual side, which we've talked about. And we're beginning to manipulate that. And so what does it mean when you merge all these things? Exactly who are you? What are you? This sort of thing. So anyway, believe it or not, this is my wee bit of joy, because I love this stuff. So I had dinner last night with Heather. She's really, really lovely. And in part because we're both New Yorkers, we of course yacked and traded notes and so on. But I really loved our free-ranging conversation. She's very comfortable hanging out with scientists. She's actually hung out with a lot of very famous ones. She's kind of using precision medicine tools. I'm a precision medicine guy. But she's applying them to high art and to make people like me think about exactly what we're doing as we sort of run amok and start cutting stuff up and pasting it back together. And so it's really a brilliant merging of the interface between art and creative science.
And Ross, it's
What do you think, Sandy?
it's also keeping you healthy too, and I can see the effects on your epigenetic aging as I sit here just now.
I'm just methylating things right and left. It's just crazy.
So it sounds like Heather sounds like a wonderful person, and she sounds like amazing. Dinner company. Actually, I'm sure that conversation you had was fascinating. I'll definitely be looking her up, and who knows? I might start wearing a hat or a hairnet the next time I'm out in public, just so I can protect some of my DNA.
I've already taken some of your DNA, my friend. It's going to get posted on the dark web. So anyway, wow, this really went dark. So that brings us to the end of today's episode, please. I've got to go out and go get that music to play through here.
Yeah, exactly.
So listen, thank you. Well, thank you, Sandy, for another fabulous half hour together. I always love this. Thanks, everybody, for listening to The Long Game. So until next time, folks, keep the heed and best of luck playing the long game.
Thanks, Ron. Goodbye.